Melody here. You might know me as Apple Pie Movement. I am a humanitarian sharing the conversations with humanity which need to be heard. In today's conversation with my cousin Rand Tucker, we discuss how he has used his platform of being the founding and senior pastor of Hyde Vineyard over the last 25 years to create social justice within Chicago. So come on, grab a piece of pie and join our conversation.
So overall, could one of the root issues maybe be capitalism, and that capitalism cannot exist without racism, without classism, without sexism, without homophobia, without all of these perpetrating fears, hate, and divisiveness amongst communities. If we were to shift from a society that is just out for the almighty dollar into a society that's based upon equitable business, would, for me, that's what I personally feel would be the solve for this situation. I've been studying racial injustice because I know racism was a tool that has been used, and perpetuated by violence and national campaign, and was, basically you cannot have racism without violence. You cannot have classism without violence. And so you have all of these communities now that are just at odds against each other 200 years. And how do you fix for that? You can't fix that in one moment, in 1 year, with one campaign, with one nice quote. It has to be a systematic change that many, many people go into, and it has to be intentional, and it has to prove lucrative, which is why I wanted to do technical training and placement and create a new system based off of that to change the system. But if kids are afraid to even go to school and they don't learn how to use a computer, then even if we are able to change that system on a business level, then how can we even change their lives to get them to that point where they can attain the training to change their lives?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that we could be, I definitely think we need to press for social reform. I think capitalism has all kinds of problems. I agree. But traveling the world and being a pastor, my perspective is it's a problem with the human condition. Because when you go to other places and when you study the history, for me, obviously, I think the root of the issue is sin. Like, no matter how you define what sin is, whether it's from a religious perspective or whether it's just, violating the dignity of another human being, it's happening all over the world. Sexism is prevalent in every form of government. People are afraid of other people in every society that I've been to. People are racist. We've got a member of our church who traveled abroad to work with an international organization that fights for justice. She grew up here on the South Side and then went to college at a prominent university and then came back here as an attorney. And she experienced more racism living overseas than she did here in Chicago.
Wow.
And so I look at it and say, capitalism has its weaknesses that allowed people to exploit others in horrific ways. But there are other systems that still allow for those things to happen, whether it's experience in communism or socialism or, other things. So for me, I go beyond that and say, if humanity is not held accountable, then it will use whatever system that it currently has to exploit others, to oppress others, to use violence against others. So I feel like there's a biblical mandate for me as a pastor to say that righteousness and justice are meant to prevail. And if you study the Old Testament, you'll see again and again and again and again that justice is in the heart of God. I think it should be in the heart of humanity. So whether people believe in God or not, I think that that things that are wrong should be made right, and things that are right should be rewarded, and that there should be an accountability, for what's right and wrong. But still, is people have different opinions about what are right and wrong, and there are
Right. I mean,
ideas.
even within Christianity, there are so many different interpretations of theology and the scripture. It's hard to even decide. And you move out of Christianity into India, you have the caste system, which was developed and established by colonialism. And when I did mission trips over to India, it was very sad to me to see that the untouchables were treated like slaves and that they were dehumanized. Even amongst the Christians in India, they saw them, even though the caste system is technically, based off of karma and past life and being born into that because you were a bad person in your past life, they still carry that over and they dehumanize the untouchables, and if we are willing to dehumanize any other person, then that is the sin, dehumanization. And I think it's perpetuated by white indifference. I mean, would you say that white indifference is the sin, in that we are born with a certain privilege and certain advantages that other people are not? We're afraid to lose those as a collective. So many white people just don't speak up when they see injustice. They remain silent because they're afraid of losing something, when in reality, rich white people don't care about poor white people. They are going to, come against them just as much as they would a poor Black person or Hispanic, because, power is what is worshipped. The almighty dollar is what is worshipped. So would the sin be white indifference, in your opinion?
I would believe that's one of many white sins. There's active, past, and present white supremacy that people directly oppress, and they're blatant and open and overt about racism. There are things that are inferential, and part of that is an indifference and a detachment from other people's suffering, and you become complicit in that oppression as you ignore it. And I think that there are some things that are kind of in between those things, where people understand that terrible things are happening, but either because it's not directly impacting them, or because they're kind of ignorant to what's really happening. If you look at the civil rights movement, the SCLC, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, believed that if they could let people know across the country what was really happening in the South. It's like one thing to kind of hear about it and you're able to diminish what's happening. But then when you're able to get it on the news and you see fire hoses and dogs attacking and you see people being beaten with clubs, and you realize like this group of people is peacefully demonstrating, which is one of their constitutional rights, and yet that's being violated and this is wrong. It pricks the moral conscience. And so I think, it is a sin to be indifferent to these issues, but it's, the sin is kind of multi-layered, and people become aware. They may not be indifferent, but they may not know what to do. They may become paralyzed by not knowing what to do. And then they're inactive. They're still accountable for it, even though they're aware.
Right. Well, people talk about reparations, and they talk about white guilt, and they talk about people just waking up. White people just waking up to the fact that there is racism and not knowing what to do about it. And I believe that one thing that can be changed is I wanted to create a social justice concert. I'm still working on that, for the passing of Justice for Lynch Victims Act of 2018. Because lynching in America is not a federal crime. Did you know that? It's still not a federal crime to lynch people in America.
It's horrific.
And because it's not a crime to lynch people in America, I believe that allows for a lot of racism and a lot of violence to happen in the gray areas, because that law hasn't been defined. So Kamala Harris, she supported the bill. And for the first time in our country's history, she finally got the bill to pass. So it is a bill but it didn't pass the House last session. It's been reintroduced. It hasn't become law. So I wanted to create a celebratory concert just for the fact that it became a bill for the first time in our country's history, and they need to address that fact. So, you know, if you're white, if you're indifferent, if you're just waking up, if you don't know how to make a reparation for what has happened and you do feel bad, redirect that guilt into establishing this law that would at least give equality, because if you can be prosecuted and it's a federal crime to lynch somebody in America, then a lot of these hate crimes that have happened, you know, then these perpetrators can be prosecuted. And I would hope that the poor people who now are becoming racist because they don't know what to do and how to provide for themselves would then maybe not commit crimes. Like, have you heard of the El Paso shooter?
I've not.
So a couple of years ago in Texas, there was an El Paso shooter. This kid, he went to Walmart and he shot up a bunch of people. And the whole entire reason why he did it was because he wanted to create a race war, because he thought his job was going to be automated out of existence. He wasn't going to be able to support his family. So in his mind, you know, he wanted to create a race war because President Trump's campaign in the South specifically has been on racial animus and stirring those flames. So, you know, lynching people were to become a federal crime, then I would hope people would not see going to a Walmart and shooting up people to start a war as a solution to the fact that jobs are being automated out of existence, and a new system needs to be created so that people aren't afraid of being able to take care of themselves.
No, I agree with you. I remember that shooting. I just didn't know the title El Paso shooter, but yeah, it's just absolutely horrific. And, you know, I really hope that people who might be listening to this would think about things that you're mentioning, because there are things that people can do in terms of helping pass laws, put pressure on legislators, raise awareness about what's happening, you know, partner, build relationships, get active, volunteer in a local place. Villages come in as, you know, somebody who's humble and a learner in these situations. And then for those who have experience, it takes a lot of vulnerability to be willing to invite other people in to, you know, a couple of Black women have told me when they, you know, were coming to our church, like, I never thought I would have a white pastor. And so, you know,
Hello?
yeah.
Joining another Apple Pie Table Talk, and we'll look forward to seeing you next week. Bye.
Bye.